Tweens' first chapter, The Secrets of Lovelace Academy, by Marie Benedict and Courtney Scheinmull. Lainey Philipps has lived at the Sycamore Home for Orphaned Children since she was 3 years old. Now, nearly a teenager, her life is hard, and she doesn't expect it to get better, until a chance encounter during an open house changes everything when Lainey meets a woman who invites her to attend the prestigious Lovelace Academy. Fitting in amongst the many privileged students within the ivy-covered walls of Lovelace Academy presents challenges unlike the ones Lainey has faced in the past. Her life of drudgery has hardly prepared her for the aristocratic airs and cutthroat academic ambition of the other girls. Terrified she'll be cast out of the academy, Lainey grabs at her chance to prove herself by traveling to Switzerland to meet a female scientist crafting a groundbreaking theory. Determined to prove her capability and reach her destination, Lainey must rely on her own wit, as well as a mysterious boy who is yet to prove himself as a friend or foe. But the real test is what awaits her in Switzerland, at the home of Mileva Maric, wife of Albert Einstein. Prologue. The Deathbed of Ada Lovelace, London, November 1852. Oh, how I used to adore planning for the future. It was exciting to consider what I wanted to do and see and accomplish in the next week, the next month, the next year, and even beyond that. But when you're on your deathbed, planning for your future is like planning for, well, it's planning for nothing, for silence and for stillness, forevermore. As far as science and mathematics can tell us anyway. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of cotton blankets on my thin body. It's strange to know that nothing else will become silent and still at the moment of my death. The earth will continue spinning on its axis each day as it makes its orbit around the sun each year. And yet I don't have much time left, just days or maybe weeks to go. Improbable that it will be months, impossible that it will be years. I'm sick and growing sicker. And so instead of planning for the future, I'm remembering the past, all the way back to my childhood, which was quite privileged, I must admit. I was raised by my mother and grandmother with the help from a few governesses and tutors. Mom insisted that whoever cared for me take my academic work seriously, especially mathematics. She herself was a rare female mathematician, and she knew I had the potential to follow in her footsteps. While other girls my age were given dolls to play with, I was given mathematical tables to help me memorize geometry equations and the Pythagorean theorem. Not that there's anything wrong with playing with dolls, or any reason that you shouldn't be able to play with your dolls and memorize your mathematics. But my mother wanted my focus to be singular, and most days I was happy to go along. When I was 13 years old, I had a horrible case of measles. I could have died back then, but I lived and grew up. I did work that made me proud. I married and had my sons Byron and Ralph and my daughter Annabella. Their futures are spread before them like gardens to explore, so much beauty and wonder, and maybe a few weeds to reckon with. Hopefully not too many. I'm going to miss the things they do next, the people they grow up to become. Yes, I had the gift of 23 extra years after recovering from my childhood illness, but still, dying at age 36 hardly seems fair at all. 36. I let the digits dance in my head, the 3 and the 6 bending and bowing toward each other. 36 is the square of 6. It's also a triangular number, which means that 36 objects can be arranged in an equilateral triangle, a perfect triangle, and a perfect square. It's in the title of one of my father's most well-known poems, too. On this day, I complete my 36th year. My father, the famous poet Lord Byron, he left London before I turned a year old. He planned to see me again, but he died at the same age I am now. My father wanted to live a useful life, and he would have wanted the same for me. Have I been useful? Is there more I can do? Even if my body must become silent and still, is there a way for my work to keep spinning? The answer comes with a knock at the door. Come in, I call out, loud as I can muster. My daughter enters. Annabella's dark hair falls just below her shoulders. I see glimpses of my old self in her sharp eyes and soft curls, and I see the promise of something new for me, too. How are you, Mother? Annabella asks. I'm better with you here, I tell her. I need your help with something. What is it? She asks. The future, I say. Sign up for a library card and find this book on Cloud Library using the links below in the description.